Do you live in the US and want an easy way to eat well and save money this year? Well, our discount might just be the one for you. HelloFresh is the US #1 meal kit service and delivers fast, fresh and affordable food to your door. So why have the cost of takeout or that horrible trip to the grocery store? Just get it delivered to you and have a hassle-free dinner of the highest quality.
So why not check out HelloFresh? Click the link down below for your special discount.
Hello and welcome to matchday 38 of Championship predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. The final weekend before the international break, and then we can really go and get into the run-in. But 10 fixtures to sink our teeth into this weekend first, with a couple of sides not playing due to FA Cup action. But before we go and do that, let's look back at a triumphant return to form in this week's predictions recap, because this week I picked up 13 points from the midweek fixtures, 3 perfect scores, including a Championship's favourite scoreline for Cardiff and West Brom, and my club Luton Town nicking a 1-0 win. We also got one on a Tuesday night for Preston's win at Rotherham, but we all got fooled by Blackpool QPR, didn't we? What a result that was for midweek. There were 4 Championship's favourite scorelines, if you want any more evidence that that is the favourite scoreline of the Championship. However, 6-1 for Blackpool against QPR is a result that I think no one in the country will have predicted. With that done though, let's go and get off to Saturday, and the reason I mention that result is because they feature in our first fixture. No early games, it is Saturday 3 PM, Blackpool versus Coventry. A very tricky one this, because prior to the last game, Blackpool had drawn 3 blanks in 4, only scored 1 goal in those 4 games, and did not look great at the back either. Against QPR, it was an absolute bloodbath. They were 3 up in the space of 15 minutes, and after that, it was plain sailing. It was a really strange result, but it brings Blackpool back into the mix. Just 4 from safety now, and they will be looking up. Can they back it up under Mick McCarthy? Is that the moment? Is that the springboard for the rest of their season? For Coventry, a frustrating evening away at Wigan, a 1-1 draw, a late own goal after Gilkeres, as so often, had scored the goal. 3 draws in 4 now, all against sides where, if you want to get to the playoffs, you would think you've got to try and win. That's Hull, Preston and the Wigan game, of course. But we saw when they went away to a relegation-threatened side in Huddersfield a couple of weeks ago, they played them off the park. The problem with Coventry is they've got a few injuries and they're not quite ruthless enough on a consistent basis. They're okay away from home. Blackpool are normally poor at home, but what do we read into midweek? I'm going to say not too much, because I think arguably the QPR form is probably the thing that was most important in that game. So sorry Blackpool fans, I don't think it's going to be back-to-back wins. I could go for another 1-1 draw, but I've got a feeling Coventry are going to nick it. I don't want to do with Blackpool what I did with QPR last week, so I'm going to go for 2-1 to the visitors. Across to the northeast next for a very tough game to predict. It is high-flying Middlesbrough against brilliant away side Preston North End. Preston won away at Rotherham by 2-1. 32 points they've picked up on the road this season, in contrast to only 21 at home. They certainly love playing away from Deepdale. Middlesbrough frustrated by Stoke. Yes, they had a couple of very good chances to win that game and probably should have based on those. But it wasn't a dominant performance and Stoke were good value for their point. So a bit of a frustrating night for them. They've been used to steamrolling teams almost every week, certainly at the Riverside. But it's not going to be the case against Preston as well. They are a good team away from home. They're resolute, they're solid defensively, only letting 2 goals in their last 6 games. And I think they could give Borough a game here. I don't know if this is my heart rule in my head because I want Luton to get in the mix for the top 2. But I do think Middlesbrough, if there is going to be some jeopardy, this is the sort of game where people look on paper and think, Preston are mid-table, it'll be all right. But I think this could be a tricky one. Preston, we know, are brilliant on the road. Do you know what? I'm going to get in so much trouble for predicting this because it's going to go wrong and you're all going to tell me in the comments. But I've got a feeling, I've got a hunch and I have to go for it. We got 13 points in midweek. We don't need any this weekend. Middlesbrough 0, Preston 1. There you go. That's the headline of this show. Let's move on to a game that should be a home banker. That is Millwall at the Den at home to Huddersfield Town. Of course, Huddersfield got a good point in the end against Norwich in midweek, albeit they didn't have a shot on target. They had Grant Hanley to thank for taking their chance for them. For Millwall, a win against Swansea after a narrow win against Reading. And I look at the teams that are up there at the minute. You look at Luton and Millwall as 2 prime examples. They're just defending well, they're nicking games, and they're showing real guts when it matters most. So I think at home, Millwall are going to be comfortable. They weren't great against Swansea, by the way. It could have easily gone the other way on another night. But they've got a top 5 home record over the season. They're always strong at the Den. And Huddersfield away from home have been, well, utterly useless, let's be honest. 10 points all season. They haven't scored in any of their last 5 games. The Norwich game, they got a 1-1 draw, but Hanley scored it. So they haven't actually scored themselves since Neil Warnock's first game in charge. So with that in mind, I've got to go for Millwall. And I know they let in 1 in the week, but I'm going to go for my favourite scoreline of theirs again. A standard home win, 2-0, and Millwall keep their place in the top 6. Well, are they going to bounce back? Our next game is at Loftus Road. It is QPR versus Birmingham City. This game is huge. Both sides on 42.7 clear of safety. The one that wins it, you argue, are probably close to being safe now with 8 games to go. The one that loses it, well, they could be right back in the mix. Are we going to see a draw? Are we going to see a cagey game? Well, these two teams' recent defensive records would suggest no. Both bounced back from brilliant home wins and clean sheets last weekend by conceding a combined 9 goals between them in midweek. The less said about QPR's performance at Blackpool, the better. Sometimes you see games that are 5-6-1 and you think, well, actually, they didn't really tell the full story of the game. That one really did, and I'm sure most QPR fans will tell you. Watford won comfortably 3-0 at home to Birmingham, who have really struggled on the road in recent times. They started the season very resolute, nicking 0-0s away from home, showing that fighting spirit. Now they normally fall into 2s and 3s, which is a little bit frustrating. We saw them pick up a big win against Rotherham, note aside in and around them. They got that point at Wigan just to keep them above touching distance. But this is such a big game. I really don't know who to go for here. QPR now, because of that defeat in midweek and the manner of it, have the joint worst defensive record in the division. But we saw how good they could be against Watford. Oh, I don't know what to go for. This is going to be tricky. Do you know what? I'm going for a bit of a thriller. I can see defensive errors. I can see a lack of confidence. I can't go for a winner. I'm going to sit on the fence, but I'm going for 2 goals apiece. Next up is Reading at home to Hull City. Both sides defeated in midweek by teams in the top 6. Reading lost 2-1 at Blackburn. Hull lost 3-1 at home to Burnley as they were part of the Nathan Teller show again. For Reading, it's 4 defeats in a row. A late red card didn't help their causes, but wasn't the worst away performance we've seen from Reading this year. And at home, we know they're a different animal. I know they've lost their last 2 home matches by 1-0, but Millwall and Sheffield United are going to be in that top 6 in all likelihood. So I don't think we read too much into that. For Hull, they've been very solid away from home under Rossinia. They've nicked points, they've been gritty, they've kept themselves in games defensively. But against Burnley at home, it was just a bit too much, wasn't it? I kind of get the impression that they're going to want to play a bit cautiously against Reading. But if they do that and allow Reading to put balls into the box and play the way other sides have against Hull on the road, then I can see them letting in goals, because that's the one thing Reading have got. They haven't got legs. I don't know if they get caught on the counter. I've got a feeling Reading win it still. At home, they've been really solid against any side outside the top 6. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Reading victory. Hull just hitting a bit of an inconsistent patch under Liam Rossinia for the first time. As next up, we head to Rotherham versus Cardiff City. And if we said the one 2 games ago was a big one at the bottom, then what about this? 20th v 21st, 4 and 5 points clear of the relegation zone. And neither side have picked up a win in the last week. Cardiff, of course, did get that draw at home to West Brom. They came back into it second half, and they have been a little bit better under Lamucci, but they've just not got a big goal-scoring threat. They're the only side to score less than 30 league goals this season, and it's really hindering their bid for survival. For Rotherham, it comes in dribs and drabs, but defensively, really not great against Preston, albeit they had a couple of chances to get something from the game. So I don't know what to go for here, but I think it's going to be an important one. We know Cardiff away from home aren't the best, only picked up 15 points in 18 games. Rotherham at home, they're a really weird side. They get a big win, they get a gutsy win, and then they just have a really flat day. And I don't know which one to expect here. I feel Cardiff are going to be a threat on the counter, but they're probably not going to have their goal-scoring boots on. So do you know what? I haven't predicted enough of these. I'm going to go for it again. 1-1, the Championship's favourite scoreline, because I don't trust either side to be clinical enough in front of goal. Let's move on to 2 sides that produce Championship's favourite scorelines in midweek. It is Stoke City versus Norwich City. I think the 2 sides will feel slightly different about their draws in midweek, because Stoke got a really good point at Middlesbrough. They stopped them playing, they were in the game, and albeit Borough had a couple of great chances, they were good value for their draw. That came off the back of the 5-1 at Sunderland and the 3-2 against Blackburn. It's really been the first time we've seen 3 good performances in a row under Alex Neil for Stoke. For Norwich, on the other hand, a couple of backward steps for the first time under David Wagner. 3 wins in a row followed up by a disappointing draw at home to Sunderland and then a really crushing draw away at Huddersfield. Albeit Huddersfield created next to nothing and it was an own goal that got them the point. Norwich didn't create a great deal either. Couple of openings, but they didn't have enough to run away with the game by 2, 3 or 4, which is what you may have expected previously. It leaves them 4 points off the playoffs. Stoke, of course, in mid-table, one of the few sides with nothing really to play for. But we know Stoke are normally awful at home. The Blackburn win was definitely a one-off, or was it? I think my head tells me Norwich bounce back and win, but you just don't know with Stoke. They could go on a run now, but I'm going to go for Norwich to nick it. Again, I think it will be tight. It should be goals because we've seen high-scoring games for both of these recently. I'm going to go for David Wagner to get a tune out of Norwich and win by 2-1. Well, on paper, there's only one result to predict for this next game, isn't there? It's Sunderland versus Luton Town. My club are flying. Just 7 points off the automatic promotion places, despite one of the lowest budgets in the league. It's an incredible feeling to watch. They're a great team. They show unity all the time. And to be fair, we thought Sunderland were going to do us a favour in midweek. 1-0 up against Sheffield United, but in the end, it was turned around. And Sunderland this season, as we mentioned many a time, they've struggled more at home than they have on the road. Sheffield United just about edged the game, but I think a draw or a Sheffield United win would have been fair. For Luton, probably should have been out of sight in the first half against Bristol City, but they came back into it and they had a couple of chances themselves. But equally, 4 1-0 wins in the last 5 games. It's an incredible effort from a team that continues to punch so far above its weight. For Sunderland, 4 defeats in 5, sandwiched by a brilliant win at Norwich by 1-0. The problem is Sunderland nearly always score. They've scored 1 in each of their last 6 games. So I'm torn between going for a 1-0 Luton win and for the Championship's favourite scoreline. But given that both sides virtually make a rule of drawing 1-1 in every game, I'm going to have to go for that. Championship's favourite scoreline, 1-1 at the Stadium of Light. And the final game on Saturday is another home banker on paper. It is Watford versus Wigan Athletic, as Watford get their first win under Chris Wilder, a 3-0 victory against Birmingham City. It was comfortable, let's be honest, and it was much needed, given what had happened in the weekend away at QPR. They did have more of the chances, albeit they still looked shaky at times in the back, gave up a few shots to Birmingham, but it was a comfortable enough win, and it was crucial after 3 blanks that they found the score sheet as well. For Wigan, didn't score their own goal, but did get a draw against Coventry, and you've got to feel for Sean Maloney. He's walked into Wigan as a financial mess seems to be ensuing. It's amazing to think that, 11 months ago, we were away at Shrewsbury as neutrals, watching Wigan lift the title. Both jubilant scenes, the owner getting chanted to the rafters in the away end. And look at what's happened now. It is baffling, really. Wigan really have to pick up a result. They're 6 points adrift. With Rotherham playing Cardiff, that's going to probably become more. To be honest, though, I just don't see how they do it, because Chris Wilder will be aggressive, he'll be front-footed, and I expect a similar outcome to what we saw in midweek. I'm not going to go for quite as many. I'm going to go for the same thing that cost me in midweek. I'm going to go for 2-0 to Watford. Wigan haven't got a goal threat, and Watford are starting to get players back under a new manager. I just think they'll have too much. The final game is on Sunday. It is Swansea City versus Bristol City. Bristol City, of course, lost 1-0 away at Luton Town in a game I watched last night as I'm recording this. And Swansea lost 2-1 away at Millwall. That is now 5 defeats in 6. It is pretty disappointing, let's be honest. Not scoring more than 1 a game, letting in goals galore. Yeah, it's not a good combination really, is it? Bristol City didn't really show much ambition in the first half against Luton. As I mentioned, it could have been 2 or 3. Albeit they came back into it second half, put up a bit of a fight, but really not a great service for the front line, and I felt for them a bit. Obviously, Harry Cornick, a former Luton player, Naki Wells taken off after not really contributing, and they were getting booed off the pitch at the end, and I didn't really get it for the attacking players. They had no service, they didn't really have a route into the game, and there was only one great chance in the end for Bristol City, which arguably they should have taken and nicked a point. Swansea, we've mentioned a defensive side for so many weeks, for so many seasons on these predictions, and it's almost becoming boring talking about it. However, their last 3 defeats have come against sides in the top 6 in Millwall, Luton and Borough. Against Bristol City, they're at home to a side in the bottom half, a side that they can potentially get very close to if they win the game. And their home record is mixed this season. They don't often draw. So do you know what? I'm going to go for them to nick a win. I don't often predict a Swansea win, and we've been right with that in the last few months. But I'm going to go for them to nick the final game by 2-1 at the Swansea.com. Even though Bristol City haven't scored in 4 of their last 5, I have to predict them to get one at Swansea because they never keep a clean sheet. With that done though, let's have a quick recap of what I've just predicted. And I think we all know where the headline is, don't we? I have gone for Preston, one of the best away teams in the league, to nick an unlikely victory away at Middlesbrough by 1-0. If all of the results go as I've predicted, then Luton will be a point closer with Sheffield United not in action. Of course, leaders Burnley aren't either, so it's a real chance for Borough and Luton to close that gap. At the bottom, it's big games galore. Keep your eyes on QPR Birmingham and Rotherham v Cardiff. I've gone for draws in both of them. But do you think someone's going to win? Because they're just my predictions. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comment section down there and give me your predictions for matchday 38. If your team's in action in the FA Cup, let us know how you think they'll get on as well. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast. We've got a special video coming later this weekend. Looking forward to non-league day next week, and we will be at a game with clips in that time as well. And keep your eyes peeled for a ramble where all 3 of the co-hosts will be back in action together. Check out HelloFresh USA in the description if you want money off and to help support the channel. And you can join as a channel member as well. Much appreciated. Thank you for watching as always. We'll see you back here next time. More championship predictions after the international break.